Commerce Alive Today presents
Marsh Supermarkets. The first attempt by a member of the Marsh family to enter the grocery business came in 1922, when Wilmer Marsh left farming to buy a small grocery and general goods store in North Salem, Indiana, population 75. All 7 of Marsh's children helped in running the store, but it was Ermal Marsh, the second youngest at 12 years old, who took the most interest in the store's operations, taking charge of the books and ordering merchandise. The store did well enough, but in 1925, during a hold-up by a member of the Al Capone gang, Wilmer Marsh was shot in the head. Although he suffered only a flesh wound, Wilmer Marsh sold the store and returned to farming. 2 years later, however, Wilmer Marsh bought a new store in New Pittsburgh, Indiana, population 50. That store was successful enough for Marsh to open a second store in Ridgeville, Indiana in 1929. Ermal Marsh, then completing his first year of college at Ball State, left school to manage the new store. Grocery stores of the era were small, about 2,400 square feet, and sold a variety of dry goods in addition to foods, which the grocer would gather from the shelves for the customers. For the new store, Ermal Marsh joined the Independent Grocers Association, which advocated new selling techniques, such as advertising and allowing the customer to choose their purchases for themselves. 3 weeks after the Ridgeville store opened, the stock markets crashed, and the Depression era began. Despite the bleak economy, the new store proved successful and was operated by brother Estill when Ermal Marsh returned to college. In order to finance his education, Ermal Marsh opened his own store in Muncie, Indiana, in 1930, borrowing $2,900 from an older brother. The first day's sales totaled $7. Yet the store, an IGA affiliate, proved successful enough for the newly graduated Ermal Marsh to open a second store 2 years later. The following year, Marsh closed that store and moved its stock to a new store located in Muncie's commercial district. He also incorporated his business as Marsh Food Stores Incorporated, listing himself as secretary and treasurer, and his older brother as president. Marsh sought financing to expand his company, but banks were reluctant to lend in the early Depression years, especially to the low-margin grocery business. By 1935, however, Marsh had arranged sufficient financing to open a third Muncie grocery. The next year, Marsh closed his second store and reopened it in a new, larger location. The new stores, both IGA affiliates, featured meat counters, fresh produce, and a sound system providing background music and in-store announcements. By the end of the decade, Marsh sought to expand again. He sold one store and opened another, larger store. Then, together with several other store owners, Marsh formed the Carload Buyers Association to purchase dry goods at wholesale for distribution to its member stores. The association next teamed up with another wholesaler, changing its name to Mundy Sales Incorporated. The U.S. entry into the Second World War barely slowed Marsh's growth. By 1943, Ermal Marsh had added 3 more stores to his operations. The following year, he opened his first store outside of Muncie, in the Jay County seat town of Portland. 2 more stores were added that same year, in Dunkirk and Marion, and in 1946, Marsh opened a new store in Muncie, closing his original store. However, Marsh's biggest advancement would occur the following year. Marsh opened 2 new groceries in 1947 and planned to open a third, somewhat larger store that year, complete with a parking lot. Unable to get permission to break the curbstones for entrances, Marsh decided to use the parking space to expand the size of the store. The new store, at 6,430 square feet, became Marsh's and Muncie's first supermarket. Called Marsh Foodliner, the store proved profitable in its first week. Encouraged by the store's success, Marsh determined to convert his operation entirely to supermarkets. The company began to expand its corporate staff. By then, too, Marsh operated its own fleet of trucks to service its stores. Over the next 3 years the company opened 4 more stores, including a second Foodliner in Muncie, helping to prove the viability of the supermarket concept. Store size was reaching 9,000 square feet in size. The company started up its own bakery in 1949, and then added a new sideline business, making ice cream in the basement of one of the stores. Sold in gallon containers, Marsh ice cream proved immediately popular, with customers selling 5 million gallons by 1957 and eventually making Marsh the country's largest distributor of gallon ice cream, beginning a long line of Marsh private label products. By 1951, Marsh was outgrowing its facilities. In that year, the company purchased an abandoned milk condensery in Yorktown, Indiana, and began construction there on the Marsh Food Center, housing production, distribution and warehouse facilities, and corporate headquarters. In order to finance the construction, Marsh went public, issuing 40,000 shares of non-voting stock. The following year, Marsh restructured the company's various operations as a single entity under the name Marsh Foodliners Incorporated. The supermarket chain had grown to 16 stores, all in Indiana. That changed in 1956, when Marsh opened its first 2 stores in western Ohio. Until this time, Marsh Supermarkets were found only in mid-sized towns and cities. In 1957, the company opened its first store in a large urban market, Indianapolis. Sales for that year reached $34 million. Marsh stepped up its expansion in the final years of the 1950s when it acquired the 8-store Food Lane Stores Incorporated chain based in South Carolina and Georgia. Marsh followed that acquisition with the purchase of Bellman Markets, a 5-store supermarket chain with an average store size of 13,000 square feet, based in Toledo, Ohio. Ermal Marsh's 5-year plan called for even faster growth, but he did not get to see completion of his plan. Ermal Marsh died in 1959 when the plane he was piloting crashed. Marsh's brother Estelle, then serving as executive vice president, took over as head of the company, now renamed Marsh Supermarkets Incorporated, and continued the pattern of growth set by Ermal Marsh. By 1960, the chain had expanded to 62 stores, reaching annual sales of $80 million. The company maintained its rapid expansion, adding 34 stores between 1960 and 1963. By 1966, Marsh had topped $100 million in sales. By then, the supermarket concept had captured the grocery market, ending the era of the small grocer. The demise of the small stores opened a new market for the increasingly mobile American public. Convenience stores had begun to appear in various parts of the country, but Indiana's restrictive laws regarding sales of beer and gasoline, the most profitable aspects of the convenience store business, left that state largely free of competitors. Marsh opened its first Village Pantry convenience store in Muncie in 1966. That division, led by then Executive Vice President Don Marsh, oldest son of Ermal Marsh, grew quickly, adding 9 more Village Pantries in 2 years. The company also experimented with another type of store concept, called Family Market, which offered a no-frills concept. When Estelle Marsh was appointed chairman in 1968, Don Marsh was named president of the company. Following the lead of other supermarket chains, Marsh moved into the drugstore business, opening its first Marsh Drug Store in 1969. Under Don Marsh's leadership, the company exited the food production business, contracting with outside companies to supply its private label products, in order to concentrate on its growing retail empire. Marsh closed out the 1960s with revenues of $122 million. Marsh continued to expand its operations at the start of the 1970s, but a slowdown in the economy, rising building costs, and increasing price competition with other supermarket chains cut deeply into the company's profits. With a 49% drop in net income in 1971, the company closed its Family Market operation, then sold its truck fleet in a sale-leaseback arrangement. The company stepped up the growth of its Village Pantry chain, bringing the total to 30 stores by 1973. In that year, the company acquired 15 convenience stores from Night Owl Food Marts Incorporated, and, with the addition of more Village Pantries, the convenience store division reached 62 stores by 1974. However, by then the Arab oil embargo and the resulting surge in inflation began to restrict Marsh's growth. Nevertheless, Marsh made international news in 1974 when its Troy, Ohio, supermarket became the first in the world to offer universal product code scanning. The new system would greatly enhance the company's ability to track its customers' purchases, linked to inventory. Scanning also helped streamline its ordering and delivery processes. Before long, UPC scanning became ubiquitous in the supermarket industry and soon spread to nearly every retail industry. Estelle Marsh retired in 1978 and was replaced by Don Marsh as CEO and chairman. By the end of the 1970s, the company had grown to include, in addition to its supermarket chain which had launched a new, expanded prototype called Marsh Extras, 109 Village Pantries, 15 Marsh Drug Stores, and 3 new ventures. The first of a chain of restaurants called Foxfires, a 7-store chain of Toad and Save Markets, a return to the no-frills shopping concept, and the first store of another division, called Farmers Market, specializing in produce sales. None of these new ventures would survive the coming decade, however. Marsh had successfully competed in its Indiana market with other national supermarket chains, but a new type of grocer soon threatened the company. The 1983 entry of Cub Foods and its warehouse concept stores into Indiana sparked a vicious price war that would last more than 2 years, driving down the profits of the larger chains and forcing at least 35 independent grocers to close. Yet Marsh, which saw its net income drop to $1.6 million on sales nearing $600 million in 1984, managed to come out of the fray intact. Better, the company actually saw an increase in its market share, capturing many of the customers of the failed supermarkets. Marsh responded to the store wars by increasing its operating efficiency and cutting out luxury expenditures, such as the company's fleet of jets. Marsh also began heightening its customer service, adding bulk food items, increasing its range of fresh foods, such as cheese, and including other services such as in-store banking and video rental. By 1985, despite a meager 4% revenue growth to $628 million over the previous year, Marsh was able to post a net profit of $4.7 million. Not all of the Marsh empire came out unscathed. The company sold off its drugstore division to the People's Drugstore chain. Marsh also unloaded its restaurant division and shut down both its Toad and Save and Farmers Market divisions. The company instead returned its focus to its supermarkets and village pantries, raising the number of Marsh Supermarkets to 76 and the number of village pantries to nearly 170 by the end of the decade. The company also picked up CSDC to serve its village pantry stores and other convenience stores in the Midwest. By 1990, sales had topped $1 billion. The 1990s brought a new growth spur to the company, which moved its headquarters to Indianapolis in 1991. The launching of a new superstore concept with stores of 60,000 to 80,000 square feet sparked several years of intensive capital investment. The company also rolled out its low-bill store concept, offering lower prices and more limited selection and offering the company the ability to convert its older, smaller Marsh supermarkets to the new concept. The company added another new division, Crystal Food Services, bringing the company into the catering and food service area. In the mid-1990s, the company faced the emergence of a new competitor in its core Indiana market. Michigan-based Meijer, a chain of hypermarkets with warehouse-style stores averaging 200,000 square feet, entered Indiana in 1993 with a reputation for allowing new stores to take losses until they had beaten competitors. Marsh responded by adding warehouse-style departments to its superstores, launching more superstores and expanding the fresh foods departments of existing stores, while appealing to 6 decades of Marsh family service to its Indiana and Ohio customers. The strategy appeared to be working. Despite the entry of 14 direct competitors, Marsh's revenues rose to $1.4 billion, and net income increased to $9 million. In December 1995, Marsh debuted its Marsh Fresh Express home delivery service, which allowed customers to order groceries via phone or fax for store pickup or home delivery. Online ordering was added later. Marsh discontinued the service in February 2003, citing increasing costs of the third-party software on which the service depended. Marsh eliminated their smaller central Indiana competitors by purchasing the 8-unit O'Malley's Food Markets chain in 2001, the 2-store chain Carter's Supermarkets in 2001, and in 2 separate purchases, 3 Mr. D's Fresh Food Market stores in 2003. The O'Malley's stores were kept as a separate banner that specialized in the upscale food trade. The Mr. D stores were converted to the O'Malley's banner, while both Carter stores were closed. Marsh made attempts to expand beyond their Indiana-Ohio market to other areas such as Chicago in 2005, but were driven out by larger competition in less than a year of operation there. In February 2006, Marsh Supermarkets announced that they were ending its longtime sponsorship of the Indiana State Fair due to the company's financial problems. The sponsorship was $175,000 per year, and it included naming rights for the fair's grandstand, Blue Ribbon Pavilion and Horticulture Building. The Marsh name remained on the Blue Ribbon Pavilion as late as 2015 when the Indiana State Fair was able to recruit Elements Financial as a new sponsor to replace Marsh. Citing increased competition, Marsh announced on November 29, 2005, that it had engaged Merrill Lynch to investigate the possible sale of the company. In April 2006, the company signed a letter of intent to be purchased by an affiliate of Sun Capital Partners, a Florida-based investment firm that specializes in leveraged buyouts. The deal would allow Sun Capital to purchase all outstanding Marsh shares for $11.16 per share, for a total of approximately $88 million. On September 27, 2006, MSH Supermarkets Incorporated, an affiliate of Sun Capital, completed the acquisition of Marsh Supermarkets Incorporated for a total purchase price of approximately $325 million. Marsh once again became a private company 53 years after it went public. Frank Lazaran was appointed president and CEO of Marsh, as a result of Don Marsh's previously announced resignation. At the time of acquisition, Marsh had operated 69 stores as Marsh Supermarkets, 38 stores as Low Bill Food Stores, 8 stores as Omalia Food Markets, 154 stores as Village Pantry Convenience Stores, and 2 stores as Arthur's Fresh Market Stores in Indiana, Illinois and Western Ohio. The company also operated Crystal Food Services, Primo Banquet Catering and Conference Centers, Floral Fashions, McNamara Florist and Inflora. All non-core subsidiaries and excess real estate resulting from closing poorly performing stores were immediately sold off. In June 2007, Sun Capital Partners announced that they would be splitting Village Pantry convenience stores from Marsh. Village Pantry now reports directly to Sun Capital Partners. Low-bill food stores were converted into Marsh hometown markets around the same time as the Village Pantry separation. Under Lazaran, Marsh replaced most of their well-known Marsh store-branded products with the higher profit but lesser-known Food Club and Value Time private label brands from Topco. Sun Capital attempted to sell Marsh in December 2009, but withdrew the offer 8 months later when they were unable to find a buyer. In August 2011, Sun Capital eliminated Marsh's warehouses and internal distribution system and replaced it with an outside third-party supplier. In February 2017, it was reported that private equity investors in Indianapolis suspect Sun already has made a tidy profit on Marsh, as a result of dividends and windfalls from selling real estate. At the same time, by underinvesting in the supermarket chain, Sun Capital had made Marsh too far gone to attract a buyout offer from a competing chain. In March 2017, it was reported that 2 stores had been closed since the beginning of the year and 2 more expected to be closed in April. At the time of the filing of the news reports in mid-March, there were 67 stores opened in Indiana and Ohio. Several landlords and other creditors had filed lawsuits seeking payment. In April 2017, Marsh announced that they planned to close 8 underperforming stores in Indiana and 2 in Ohio by the end of May to leave 53 operating stores. Upon hearing the latest announcement of store closings that occurred shortly after the store closing announcement during the previous months of 2017, a writer for the Indianapolis Star asks if the most recent announcement is just the beginning of the end for the company. At the beginning of May 2017, Marsh sold all of their in-store pharmacy records in both Indiana and Ohio to CVS Pharmacy for an undisclosed amount and closed the pharmacies. As a result of this action, Marsh stores in Indiana were no longer allowed to sell hard liquor due to an obscure Indiana law that required grocery stores to have pharmacies in order to sell hard liquor. It was later discovered that Marsh had received $38 million from CVS for the drug inventory and customers' prescription records, along with an agreement that forbids a potential buyer from operating a prescription issuing pharmacy at those locations for 5 years. On May 4, 2017, Marsh announced the closings of 9 additional central Indiana stores that were to be closed by the end of May. On May 9, Marsh announced that unless a buyer of some of the stores, or all stores, was found, all 44 remaining stores would close within 60 days of the announcement. This announcement followed the one that Marsh had made the day before, in which they had announced the closing of 16 additional stores in Indianapolis, as well as Bloomington, Brownsburg, Carmel, Greenwood, Kokomo, Marion, Muncie, and Zionsville by July. Marsh had also notified the Indiana Department of Workforce Development of the impending mass terminations as required under the Federal Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. Sun Capital Partners quietly sold controlling interest in Marsh to Delaware-based JT Grocery Consulting LLC on March 24, 2017, the same day JT Grocery Consulting was formed. Among Sun Capital's problems was a pension fund so severely underfunded that federal intervention was being considered. 2 months later, Marsh filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. In its bankruptcy filing, the company estimated it had up to 49 creditors, estimated assets of up to $50,000 and liabilities of $50 million to $100 million. The largest claim was $61 million owed to one of the two employee pension funds. Suppliers that were owed money included Keebler, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. The treasurer's offices for Delaware and Hamilton counties were also listed for being owed unpaid back taxes. At the time of the filing, Marsh operated a total of 60 stores, 54 in Indiana and 6 in Ohio, with 16 of those stores scheduled to close by the end of May. On June 15, 2017, Marsh converted its Chapter 11 bankruptcy to Chapter 7, with plans to close all 18 stores by July 8. On the same day, Marsh stopped new food shipments to and started liquidation sales. It was reported in 2018 that the gradual sell-off of the company allowed Sun Capital and its investors to recover their money and then some. The company entered bankruptcy, leaving unpaid more than $80 million in debts to workers, severance and pensions. In the same article, GPM Investments also accused Sun Capital of stripping Marsh Supermarkets and its affiliates of more than $100 million that should have been used to resolve the pension obligation.
Where in the world would you have to go to find the freshest of everything? You could fly to Holland for beautiful flowers, to the mountains of Colombia for the richest coffee, to Italy for the finest pasta, or you could go to your neighborhood Marsh store. Freshness from around the world is right around the corner at Marsh.
If you have any fond memories, please indicate it at the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and like.